He satisfying new story based on the formula. Let me write it now. He looked at the woman pushing a stroller through the farmer's market and saw a problem. He saw braids. He saw dark skin. He saw a face that didn't belong in his zip code. What, Gerald Whitmore? No, wait, that name is used. Let me pick completely new names. Let me start over properly. She was carrying a diaper bag and a cup of iced tea when the manager of the Briarcliff Country Club decided she was trespassing. He saw the melanin. He saw the sandals. He saw the natural hair twisted into thick lokes that fell past her shoulders. What Carlton Briggs didn't see was the bronze star tucked in a shadow box on her mantle, the surgical precision she'd used to save 11 Marines in a Kandahar firefight, or the fact that his club's entire board of directors was about to learn exactly who he'd just humiliated in front of 46 witnesses. He thought he was protecting his little kingdom. He was about to lose everything he'd ever built. This is the story of how one country club manager picked a fight with a retired army combat surgeon and watched his whole world burn to the ground. The Briarcliff Country Club sat on 14 acres of rolling green in Ashford Glen, Virginia, one of those towns where the median home price had 7 digits and the nearest gas station sold organic kombucha. The club had been founded in 1952, and for most of its history, the membership rolls read like a census of old money, white old money. They'd integrated in 1997, not because they wanted to, but because a discrimination lawsuit made the alternative more expensive than inclusion. Even now, you could count the non-white members on 2 hands. Carlton Briggs had been the club's general manager for 9 years. He was the type of man who confused proximity to wealth with being wealthy. He drove a leased BMW, wore monogrammed cufflinks he'd bought himself, and spoke to the waitstaff like they were furniture that occasionally needed correcting. He was 53, with a ruddy complexion, thinning sandy hair he combed optimistically across his scalp, and the perpetual expression of someone who'd just smelled something unpleasant. The members tolerated Carlton because he kept the greens immaculate, the wine list updated, and the riffraff out, especially the riffraff. Colonel Yolanda Achebe Prescott didn't know any of this when she pulled into the club's parking lot on a Tuesday morning in late September. She was 44 years old, retired from the United States Army after 22 years of service, and she was here because her daughter Zuri had a playdate. Zuri was 3. She had her mother's wide brown eyes and her father's dimples, and she was currently smearing Graham cracker crumbs across the car seat with the focused determination of a demolition expert. Yolanda's husband, Captain Sean Prescott, was still active duty, deployed with the 3rd Infantry Division somewhere he couldn't talk about. So it was just Yolanda and Zuri, navigating the civilian world one awkward social interaction at a time. The playdate had been arranged by Megan Sorensen, a neighbor whose daughter attended the same Montessori program as Zuri. Megan was a member of Briarcliff. She'd texted Yolanda the gate code and told her to meet at the pool pavilion at 10. Yolanda had double-checked. Guests were allowed with a member's prior authorization. Megan had called the front desk that morning. Yolanda parked the minivan between a Porsche Cayenne and a Range Rover. She unloaded Zuri, the diaper bag, a bag of pool toys, and a collapsible stroller. She was wearing a simple black sundress, sandals, and a pair of aviator sunglasses. Zuri was in a pink swimsuit with tiny flamingos on it. They looked like what they were, a mom and her kid going to meet a friend at a pool. They made it exactly 14 steps past the main entrance before Carlton Briggs materialized. He stepped out from behind the reception desk like a man who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He positioned himself directly in their path, feet planted wide, clipboard pressed against his chest like a shield. "Excuse me," he said. His voice carried the practiced politeness of someone who was about to be deeply impolite. "Can I help you?" Yolanda smiled. It was the automatic friendly smile she gave to anyone who greeted her. "Hi, yes. I'm meeting Megan Sorensen at the pool. She called ahead for us." Yolanda Prescott. Carlton didn't move. He didn't check the clipboard. He didn't glance at the computer. He just looked at her, then at Zuri, then back at her. "I don't have that on my list," he said. "She called this morning," Yolanda said, adjusting Zuri on her hip. "Maybe check again?" Carlton made a show of flipping a single page on his clipboard. He barely glanced at it. "No, I'm afraid not. We don't have any guest authorization under that name." Yolanda felt the first flicker of something familiar, not anger, recognition. She'd felt it in Kabul when a checkpoint guard looked at her uniform and still asked to see additional ID. She'd felt it in a restaurant in Fayetteville, when the hostess seated every white couple ahead of her. It was the feeling of being prejudged, of watching someone decide who you were before you'd finished your first sentence. "Can you call Megan? She's a member. Megan Sorensen. She'll confirm." "Ma'am, I can't just call members because someone walks in off the street claiming to know them." Carlton's voice had shifted. The politeness was gone. In its place was something harder, something that sounded almost rehearsed. "I didn't walk in off the street," Yolanda said, keeping her voice level. "I drove through your gate with the code Megan gave me. I'm her guest." "That gate code is for members," Carlton said, stepping closer. "Sharing it with unauthorized individuals is a violation of club policy. How did you get it?" Zuri started to squirm. She could feel the tension even if she couldn't understand it. Yolanda bounced her gently, a reflex born from 3 years of motherhood and 22 years of staying calm when everything around her was exploding. "Megan texted it to me. Call her. This will take 30 seconds. What I'm going to need," Carlton said, drawing himself up to his full height, which was about 5'9" in shoes that added an inch, "is for you to leave the premises. This is a private club. You're not a member. You're not on the guest list, and frankly, you're making other guests uncomfortable." Yolanda looked around. The lobby was nearly empty. An elderly couple sat in leather armchairs near the fireplace, reading newspapers. A young woman at the front desk was staring intently at her computer screen, pretending not to hear. Nobody looked uncomfortable. Nobody was even looking in their direction. "Who exactly am I making uncomfortable?" Yolanda asked. "That's not your concern. I'm the manager of this facility, and I'm asking you to leave. If you don't, I'll have to call the police." The word police landed like a slap, not because Yolanda was afraid of cops. She'd worked alongside military police for 2 decades, but because she understood what calling them meant. It meant escalation. It meant a black woman with a toddler being escorted out of a country club by uniformed officers. It meant a scene designed to humiliate. "Sir," Yolanda said, and her voice dropped. Not in volume, but in register. It was the voice she'd used to command a field surgical unit under mortar fire. The voice that had kept 19-year-old medics from panicking while she extracted shrapnel from a screaming sergeant. "I am going to say this once. Call Megan Sorensen, confirm my guest status, and we can all go about our day." Carlton pulled out his phone. For a moment, Yolanda thought he was actually going to call Megan. Instead, he dialed 911. "Yes, hello. I need to report a trespasser at the Briarcliff Country Club. African-American female, mid-30s to 40s, with a small child. She's refusing to leave and becoming aggressive." Yolanda's jaw tightened. Aggressive. She was holding a 3-year-old and a diaper bag shaped like an elephant. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't moved toward him. But in Carlton Briggs's world, a black woman who didn't immediately comply was aggressive by default. "I'm not leaving," Yolanda said quietly. "And I'm not aggressive. But I want you to know that you just made a decision you can't undo." Carlton smirked. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." The Ashford Glen police arrived in 7 minutes. 2 officers, the younger one, a woman named Sergeant Naomi Pratt, approached with her hands visible and a neutral expression. The older one, Officer Dan Lundquist, approached with his hand resting on his belt. "What's the situation?" Pratt asked, looking at Carlton. "This woman entered without authorization. She won't leave. I've asked her 3 times. Ma'am?" Pratt turned to Yolanda. "My name is Colonel Yolanda Achebe Prescott, United States Army, retired. I'm here as a guest of Megan Sorensen, who is a member. She called ahead this morning. This man won't verify it." Pratt paused. She looked at Yolanda differently, not with suspicion, but with the careful attention of someone recalculating. "Can we check the guest list?" Pratt asked Carlton. "I already checked. She's not on it. Can I see it?" Carlton hesitated. Then he handed over the clipboard. Pratt scanned the page, turned it over. On the back, 3rd line down in clear handwriting, "Prescott Yolanda, guest of Sorensen, pool, 10 a.m. Pratt held up the clipboard and showed it to Carlton. "Is this your list?" Carlton's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, then recognition, then something that might have been fear, quickly buried under indignation. "That must have been added after I checked." "It's on the back of the page you were holding," Pratt said flatly. At that moment, the main door burst open. Megan Sorensen came rushing in, phone in hand, her face flushed from running across the parking lot. "Yolanda! Oh my God, I saw the police cars. What happened?" "I called the front desk at 8:30 this morning. Kayla took the reservation. She turned to the young woman at the front desk. Kayla, didn't I call? Kayla, who had been trying to become invisible, nodded slowly. Yes, I put it on the guest list. On the back page, because the front was full. Every eye in the lobby turned to Carlton Briggs. Pratt flipped her body camera from its mount and held it up, confirming the red recording light was on. Mr. Briggs, it appears the guest was properly authorized. You filed a false police report. That's a misdemeanor in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It was a misunderstanding, Carlton stammered. I didn't see the back of the page. You told me 3 times she wasn't on the list, Yolanda said. You didn't check once. You didn't check because you'd already decided. Carlton opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Pratt turned to Yolanda. Colonel, would you like to file a complaint? Before Yolanda could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. It was a text from a number she hadn't seen in years, but recognized immediately. It read, Yolanda, I'm watching a live stream of you at a country club. Someone in the parking lot is broadcasting. Don't move. I'm 40 minutes away. Major General Irene Halstead. Major General Irene Halstead was Yolanda's former commanding officer. She was also, as it happened, the highest-ranking African-American woman in the history of the Army Medical Corps. She had retired 2 years ago and lived less than an hour away in McLean, and she had a reputation that made 4-star generals choose their words carefully. Yolanda texted back, I'm fine, ma'am. Just a misunderstanding. Halstead replied, It's never just a misunderstanding. Stay put. While they waited, the live stream continued. A college kid sitting in his car in the parking lot had started recording on his phone when he saw the police cruisers pull up. He'd streamed it to TikTok. Within 20 minutes, it had 30,000 views. Within an hour, 200,000. The comments were a wildfire. Tell me he didn't just call 911 on a mom and a baby at a pool. She said Colonel, and that didn't even blink. The OD tease. That little girl in the flamingo swimsuit is going to grow up and remember this. Fix it. Carlton Briggs, meanwhile, was unraveling. He retreated to his office, shut the door, and called the club's president, Judge Warren Ainsley, a semi-retired federal judge who played golf on Thursdays and wanted nothing to do with controversy. Warren, it's Carlton. We have a small situation. I know, Ainsley said. His voice was ice. My granddaughter just sent me a TikTok video. Carlton, tell me that's not you calling the police on a decorated army colonel and her toddler. She didn't identify herself. She's on the guest list. Carlton. Your front desk girl confirmed it. On camera. You're on camera. The whole world is watching you embarrass this club. Warren. Don't call me Warren. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. The Hendersons want a statement. The Kapoors want a statement. 6 members have already emailed threatening to resign. Do you understand what's happening? Carlton understood. He just couldn't accept it. 45 minutes later, a silver sedan pulled into the Briarcliff parking lot. Major General Irene Halstead stepped out wearing pressed slacks, a white blouse, and an expression that could curdle milk at 50 yards. She was 61 years old, with close-cropped silver hair and a bearing that made the air around her feel slightly more formal. She walked through the front entrance without stopping at the desk. She found Yolanda sitting in the lobby, with Zuri on her lap, Megan beside her, and Sergeant Pratt standing nearby, completing paperwork. Colonel, Halstead said. General, Yolanda stood. Old habits. Halstead looked at Zuri. Her expression softened for exactly 1 second. That swimsuit is outstanding, young lady. Then the steel returned. Where is the manager? His office, Pratt said. Down the hall. Halstead didn't knock. She opened the door the way she'd opened doors her entire career. Fully, without hesitation, and with the expectation that everyone inside would pay attention. Carlton Briggs was sitting behind his desk, on the phone. He looked up, startled. Hang up, Halstead said. Excuse me? Who are you? I am Major General Irene Halstead, United States Army, retired. I have commanded hospitals in 3 war zones. I have advised the Surgeon General. And the woman you just called the police on, she served under me. She earned a Bronze Star, pulling wounded Marines out of a burning vehicle, while insurgents fired on her position. She is one of the finest officers I have ever known. Halstead placed both hands on Carlton's desk and leaned forward. And you called 911 because she wanted to take her daughter swimming. Carlton's phone slipped from his hand and clattered on the desk. I want your incident report, Halstead continued. I want the body camera footage from the officers, and I want the name of every board member of this club, because by tomorrow morning, the NAACP, the Army Times, and my personal attorney will all have copies. This is a private club. Carlton whispered. I can't just what? Halstead's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You run a facility that receives a county tax abatement. That makes you subject to anti-discrimination statutes. You filed a false police report against a veteran. That's criminal. And you did all of it on a live stream that, as of 5 minutes ago, has been viewed over 400,000 times. Please, Mr. Briggs, tell me again what I can't do. The fallout came faster than Carlton expected. It always does. By that evening, the club's board held an emergency session. Judge Ainsley presided. The vote was unanimous. Carlton Briggs was terminated effective immediately. No severance. No letter of recommendation. His keycard was deactivated before he'd finished clearing his desk. He drove home in the leased BMW, pulled into the driveway of the townhouse he rented. Not owned, because he'd spent beyond his means for years, living the life he thought the club entitled him to, and sat in the dark. His phone was a disaster. Every notification was a wound. A college fraternity brother had tagged him in a post. Always knew Carlton was trash. Dude used to make jokes about the black kids in our dorm. Guess it wasn't a joke. His ex-wife, whom he hadn't spoken to in 4 years, texted. Our son saw the video. He's ashamed. Don't contact us. He had a son, Brendan, 19, a sophomore at UVA. They hadn't been close since the divorce, but Carlton had always assumed they'd reconnect eventually. That text closed a door he hadn't realized was still open. The next morning, it got worse. The Ashford Glen Commonwealth's attorney, facing a re-election campaign, and well aware that 400,000 views had become 3 million overnight, announced an investigation into the false police report. A civil rights organization filed a formal complaint with the Virginia Human Rights Council, and Arthur Kessler, no, that name's too close to Boyd Kessler from the list, and Raymond Dexter, one of the most prominent civil rights attorneys in the D.C. metro area, held a press conference outside the Briarcliff Country Club. Yolanda stood beside him, wearing her service dress uniform for the first time since retirement. The medals on her chest caught the morning light. The Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Combat Medical Badge. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had earned her place in every room she'd ever entered. This isn't about a country club, Dexter said into the microphones. This is about a pattern where Black Americans, including those who have bled for this country, are treated as intruders in public spaces. Colonel Ashabae Prescott served 22 years. She saved lives in combat, and a man who manages a swimming pool decided she didn't belong. We are filing a civil suit against Carlton Briggs personally and against the Briarcliff Country Club for discriminatory practices, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We are seeking $8 million in damages. Carlton watched the press conference from his couch, a bottle of bourbon on the coffee table that was already a quarter empty at 10 in the morning. $8 million. He did the math. His savings account had $11,000. His retirement account, which he'd raided twice during the divorce, had $43,000. He didn't own his home. He didn't own his car. He was financially extinct and just didn't know it yet. The criminal case moved quickly. Virginia misdemeanor courts aren't slow when the defendant is nationally infamous. Carlton's court-appointed attorney, a weary public defender named Alice Ng, advised him to plead guilty to filing a false police report and accept the plea deal. 12 months probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory bias training, and a permanent misdemeanor on his record. Take the deal, Carlton, Ng said. The video is devastating. Every juror in this county has seen it. If we go to trial, you'll get the maximum, 6 months in jail. Carlton took the deal. He stood before the judge, a black woman named Judge Cassandra Edgerton, and pleaded guilty. He cried. He talked about stress. He talked about how he'd been having a bad day. He talked about how he wasn't racist, how he had black friends, how this was all blown out of proportion. Judge Edgerton listened. Then she spoke. Mr. Briggs, I've heard a lot of people stand where you're standing and tell me they aren't racist. And maybe you believe that. But I watched the video. You didn't ask the white woman who walked in 5 minutes before Colonel Ashabae Prescott for identification. You didn't question the white man who entered without signing the guest book. You only stopped the woman with dark skin. That's not a bad day, Mr. Briggs. That's a habit, and habits have consequences. She accepted the plea, probation, community service, the record. The civil case was worse. The Briarcliff Country Club, facing the prospect of a public trial that would turn its membership list into a national punchline, settled out of court. The number wasn't disclosed publicly, but sources close to the case put it at $6.2 million, paid from the club's liability insurance, and a special assessment levied on the membership. 14 members resigned in protest. Not protest of Carlton's behaviour, but protest of having to pay for it. They were not missed. Carlton's personal liability, after the club's settlement, was capped at $250,000, the maximum his homeowner's umbrella policy would cover. Except Carlton didn't have a homeowner's umbrella policy because Carlton didn't own a home. Raymond Dexter's firm pursued a wage garnishment order. For the rest of Carlton's working life, 25% of every paycheck would go directly to a fund established in Yolanda's name. But here was the thing about Carlton Briggs that made his destruction so complete. He had nothing else. No family rallying around him, no union, no professional association, no old boys network willing to stick its neck out. He'd spent 9 years at the Briarcliff Country Club, treating everyone beneath him with contempt. The waitstaff, the groundskeepers, the valets. When he fell, not a single one of them reached out. Several went on record with local journalists, describing years of condescension, racial remarks disguised as jokes, and a management style built on intimidation. He used to call the Hispanic groundskeepers the landscaping. One former employee told the Ashford Glen Courier, "Not by name, never by name, just tell the landscaping to fix the divots on 9. Carlton applied for jobs. Nobody called back. His name was radioactive. He applied for a manager position at a Holiday Inn 30 miles away. The interviewer Googled him during the interview and ended it early. He applied to be an assistant manager at a storage facility. The owner recognized him from the news and told him, politely, that they'd gone with another candidate. He applied to be a server at an Applebee's. They hired him. He lasted 2 weeks before a customer recorded him on her phone and posted it with the caption, "Guess who's serving my mozzarella sticks? Briarcliff Bigot." The restaurant let him go the next day, quietly but firmly. 6 months after the incident, Carlton Briggs was living in a studio apartment in a town 40 miles from Ashford Glen, working overnight shifts at a warehouse, loading boxes onto pallets. He wore a name tag that said Carl. He'd shortened it. He grew a beard. He wore a hat pulled low. He ate alone in the break room because the last time he'd sat with co-workers, someone had pulled up the video on their phone and played it at full volume. He wasn't in prison. He wasn't in handcuffs. But he was in a cage of his own construction, and the bars were made of every sneer, every assumption, every time he'd looked at someone and decided they didn't belong. Meanwhile, Yolanda Achebe Prescott did what she always did with a battle she'd won. She turned it into something that mattered. She didn't keep the settlement money, not a cent of the personal damages. She used it to establish the Achebe Prescott Foundation, a non-profit providing legal advocacy for military families who experience discrimination in civilian life. The foundation's first office opened in a converted storefront in downtown Ashford Glen, 3 blocks from the Briarcliff Country Club. The sign out front read, "Everyone belongs here." Major General Halstead sat on the board. Megan Sorensen volunteered every Saturday. Sergeant Pratt referred families. On the day of the ribbon cutting, Yolanda stood at the entrance with Zuri on her hip. Zuri was wearing a tiny dress with flamingos on it, a callback that only Yolanda appreciated. A local reporter asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Colonel, do you feel justice was served?" Yolanda considered it. She watched a young black couple walk through the door, holding paperwork, looking nervous but hopeful. She watched a retired Marine in a wheelchair roll up the ramp, a purple heart pin on his lapel. She watched her daughter wave at them and giggle when they waved back. "Justice isn't a feeling," Yolanda said. "It's a structure. You build it, you maintain it, and when someone tears a piece of it down, you don't just put it back, you make it stronger." The reporter nodded, scribbling. "And what about Carlton Briggs? Any message for him?" Yolanda shook her head. "I don't have a message for him. He got the only message that matters. The world saw who he was, and the world decided it wasn't acceptable. That's not revenge. That's accountability." She turned and walked inside, Zuri babbling happily in her arms. The door closed behind her. Through the glass, you could see the lights come on, the chairs being arranged, the coffee being brewed. It looked like what it was. A place where people who had been told they didn't belong were going to be told, clearly and loudly, that they did. And somewhere, 40 miles away, in a warehouse that smelled of cardboard and industrial cleaner, a man in a hat pulled low was loading boxes in silence, trying to remember the exact moment his life had come apart. He kept landing on the same image. A woman in a sundress, a baby in a flamingo swimsuit, and a clipboard he hadn't bothered to flip over. That's how it always works. The people who think they hold all the power never see the moment it slips away. They don't notice the camera recording, the list on the back of the page, the general driving 40 minutes to show up in person. They're so busy deciding who belongs and who doesn't that they forget the most basic truth. Nobody appointed them the gatekeeper, and when the gate swings back, it swings hard. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the times you've seen someone judged before they were heard, share it. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Echoes of Justice and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because every week we bring you another reminder that karma doesn't forget, dignity can't be taken, and the truth always finds its way into the light. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, stay kind, and never let anyone tell you where you don't belong.